Welcome in, NKYSportsblog.com, the Bracket Breakdown Podcast. It's Sunday, and the brackets have officially been released for the 9th Region Tournament, and it's time for us to start doing what we do every year this time, and that's talk about these matchups. And it's an interesting draw this year, Ryan, because we had a lot of favorites in the districts lose in their district final. So we've got some underdogs as the district champions and some favorites as the district runner-up. So it's made for some interesting matchups in the first round. Let's go ahead and take a look at these real quick. Starting off at the top of the bracket, on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, Cooper will take on Dixie. Cooper, of course, the winner of the 33rd. Dixie, the runner-up in the 34th. They were shocked by Lloyd. The 7:30 game will feature Newcath and Covcath. Newcath, the champion out of the 36th, and Covcath, the runner-up in the 35th. Then on Thursday evening, we'll have Holmes and Boone at 6 o'clock, and then Lloyd and Highlands at 7:30. Holmes winning the 35th, Boone runner-up in the 33rd, Lloyd the champion of the 34th, and Highlands the runner-up in the 36th district. So before we get to these matchups, Ryan, let's talk about winners and losers here. Who do you feel like came out ahead when you look at these matchups?
I really think Dixie got a good draw despite losing to Lloyd in their district tournament. I think Cooper's a phenomenal first-round matchup for them. Newcath, Covcath, they've beaten those teams already this year, so I really like their chances. I like Holmes' chances, honestly, because they have Lloyd and Highlands in the second round if they're able to get past Boone. Boone has beaten Holmes, but Boone's they've been kind of sliding down a little bit lately. They got the big win against Dixie, but they played Ryle really tight. Ryle's a team that struggled a lot this year, and Cooper, who they split in the regular season. But Boone beat them pretty well the first time, and then Cooper came back and got them. So that's going to be an interesting first-round matchup. But if Holmes can get past Boone, I like their chances to advance to the championship game.
And I'm going to go with, in this, I like Lloyd's draw the best. And they won the championship, so they deserved their draw. So I shouldn't say they're really a winner because it wasn't like it was a gift. They earned this opportunity by winning the 34th district and beating Dixie. But I really like their matchup with Highlands, who, in my opinion, is the weakest team in the tournament. I think they got a great first-round matchup. And then the second round, Holmes and Boone, obviously two teams with a great chance to win it. But regardless of which side of the bracket you're on, you're going to have to play a team with a chance to win it. So I think Holmes and Boone are both athletic teams, play a little more up-tempo, allow Lloyd to kind of play at their pace, play the style they want to play. And I think those will be fun and entertaining matchups there in that semifinal. So I think Lloyd got a really good draw. I'll go with them as my biggest winner. Who's your biggest loser? Who do you think got a really raw draw here?
I think Cooper, they win their district tournament, and they have to face Dixie right off the bat. Dixie, kind of laid it to them. Granted, it was at Dixie, so, maybe on a neutral court, on a bigger floor, maybe Cooper's got a chance to pull off the upset there. I think that would be an upset, even though they're the district champion, they're the one seed. But I think that's a tough draw for them. I think it's also going to be tough for them to get past Covcath or Newcath if they do get past Dixie.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, with Cooper being the biggest loser here. I think they got a tough draw against Dixie, but I think when you go back to that Dixie-Cooper game, I think the thing you got to remember, that's a close game for 3.5 quarters. Dixie only wins that game 59-48. It was low scoring, and the Colonels really just made shots down the stretch to sort of pull away, and Cooper couldn't seem to score. Cooper is a team that can play with Dixie, I think. I think Cooper can play with anyone in this field because of their defense, but I agree. If you look at Cooper did everything you ask of them. They win their district tournament, and they face off probably the best team in the tournament in the first round. It seems like a tough deal for them. I think they'd, rather play Lloyd or Highlands or someone like that for winning their district like they should have instead of Dixie. But such is life, and you're going to have to win the games anyways. And we know how Coach Tim Sullivan is. He's not going to care. He's going to tell his guys it doesn't matter. And they would have had to win the game eventually anyway. So I think that's going to be a fun first-round matchup, too.
I think Coach Sullivan definitely relishes the opportunity to play Dixie. If they were to beat that team in the first round, they have all the momentum for the rest of the tournament, as far as I'm concerned. And they're a team that's going to defend very well against Dixie. I think they're kind of on a really strong roll. They're momentum is where they want it to be anyway. So maybe that carries them into Dixie. Of course, Dixie's going to be looking for blood after losing to Lloyd. They're not real happy with the way that game turned out. So it's going to be very interesting. I still think Dixie's the favorite there, but definitely don't count Cooper out at this point.
Yeah, well, we're going to break down these games. We're already sort of into Cooper Dixie, and that's the top of the bracket. So we'll continue talking about that. When you look at this matchup again, 59-48, the first time these two teams played. I think the biggest thing when you look at these two teams is how many points can Cooper score in this matchup, basically, is what it comes down to. Because we know Cooper's the best defensive team possibly in the region, but you can only hold Dixie to so many. I mean, you're not going to play Dixie in the low 50s. Best case scenario, you're looking at 59. I thought they defended Dixie really well. They held them to 59. I don't know if you can do much better than that. So can Cooper score 60 points against Dixie is the question. I'm glad we sort of switched it up. You got a chance to watch Cooper Saturday night, Friday night rather, in the finals of 33rd. You got a chance to see what they can do. You got a chance to see them play well against a good Boone team. What's the potential for this Cooper offense? Can they score 60 points against a team like Dixie?
Well, Alex Webster, big game in the district finals. Named the MVP. He was what got that team going. He's kind of set the tone for them from the outset. He scored their first 6 points, and from that point on, the whole team just kind of, jumped on his back, and he was huge. But for them to be able to play with Dixie, he's got to play a complete offensive game. He can't just kind of sit back and let the game come to him. I think he needs to force the issue a little bit more. And that was the most impressive thing about him in that game in the first quarter. He was just attacking the basket at will. Now, I think Dixie's a little bit better defensively than Boone is, and they'll send some better defenders at him, but he's got to be aggressive, and he's more than capable of it. He's good inside and out, and he's going to be a big key for them. They got to hit some outside shots as well. And they need some big play out of Aaron Morgan, their point guard. Him and AJ Collins, they got to be great. And they were against Boone County. They're very good at getting in the paint, kicking out, finding the open man, and they just need to finish those opportunities.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the 3-point field goals. I think that's sort of the equalizer in basketball at any level. You're talking about this game. Cooper kind of needs something to equal the talent level between these two teams because Dixie across the board just has more talent, more offensive firepower. I think Cooper does a very good job of staying together, sticking to a game plan, all the things that are going to go into winning that game. I think they'll be there in the end. They'll give themselves a chance to win it, but you've got to make the plays down the stretch to ultimately win the game, and that's going to come down to making those 3-point opportunities like you talked about. Guys like Aaron Morgan, Cody Cook, some of these other guys who are considered the role players to have enough confidence to say, hey, I'm going to drive to the basket, kick out, and make a play. If Cody Cook's in the corner, he's going to spot up and hit those 3 threes like he did in the first quarter against Connor in the 33rd District Tournament. Things of that nature is what got them here. It's what got them a 33rd District Championship, and it's what they're going to need if they're going to be able to make a run in the 9th Region Tournament. When you flip the page and you look at Dixie, I think the thing about this Dixie team is the fact that here's what happened to them. They're very calm, they're very cool, they're very casual. They don't get rattled. For a young team, it's sort of exceptional that they're just always very even keel. They don't get too high, too low. I think it's also what catches them sometimes. They get a little, not necessarily careless, but just a little too loose. They're a little too comfortable. They don't have that sense of urgency at all times. You saw it, district tournament game. It's not like they didn't come to play. They played fairly well, but they weren't able to sort of turn it up and take it to that next notch that they needed to beat a very good Lloyd team. And I think it's sort of that just confidence that they have and that general calmness that they have about them, which is a result of their confidence that, hey, we kind of know we're the best team around Northern Kentucky. That's sort of the vibe I get from them. And it's not an overconfidence. It's just that they're a confident group that doesn't always seem to turn it up when they need to or when they don't have to. I think, though, in the 9th Region Tournament, we're going to see a little bit different of a Dixie team. And I think when Dixie's been at its best this year, they've been really good defensively. And I think that's the thing that's going to throw some people off is when they see how well Dixie can actually defend.
Well, to your point about Dixie's kind of MO, their attitude, in the 9th Region Tournament, we saw them win it last year. And that was not a surprise to us completely. And then this year, coming off that experience, we kind of deem them the favorite, and deservedly so. And there's times where they play like they feel like they are the favorite. And it's, do they use that experience to know that they're capable of making another run, or is it a kind of an arrogance and swagger that could get them into trouble without that urgency? Knowing that they're going to have to fight, they're going to have to play hard in order to get back there. Because there's other teams, they want to get there. There's a lot of teams that haven't been there. Dixie's been there. They know what it's like. So if they want to taste it again, they can't stay at the same level. They got to pick it up a notch, because just playing at the same level isn't going to get them to where they want to be and make a run in the state tournament.
That's exactly right. You look at these matchups as far as personnel-wise goes, it's going to be interesting, and I think it played out this way the first time. Is you just, the backcourt of Dixie is very difficult to match up with. Aaron Morgan does a good job defensively, but he's got a difficult matchup in Jordan Fox that he's going to have. He does a good job guarding him, but he's going to have a tough time scoring on Fox. Fox is a pretty good defender with good athleticism. You've got Hatton, who's obviously the best player in the region in most people's opinion. He's going to be a really difficult matchup for Boone County. A.J. Collins will fight against him. They'll put a couple other guys on him to try to slow him down, but it's a tough matchup. The rest of the way, I think Cooper is okay. I think Louis Maniaci and Parker Stansbury was a pretty good matchup the first time, but it's worth noting Louis Maniaci was in foul trouble that first game for most of the game and kind of became a non-factor there for the final three quarters after getting off to kind of a slow start. So if he gives them a lift this time, it maybe helps them get over the hump offensively, but I think personnel-wise, these two teams are close enough matched that if Cooper brings their A game, they're going to be in this game at the end. I don't think I see this game as being blowout. You have any final thoughts before we move on?
I just think Maniaci is the key, honestly, to that game. If he can stay in the game, if he stays aggressive, if he plays smart on defense to where he's allowed to stay in the game, I think he can make a world of difference. His size is so huge. Once he exits the game, they struggle. And maybe if he's not doing anything on offense, he's still a factor on defense. So he has to make sure that he stays in the game, doesn't get in foul trouble, and is there to defend Stansbury.
The second matchup that fans will be treated to on that Wednesday night, starting at 7:30, Newcath and Covington Catholic. And this is an interesting matchup. Newcath beat Covcath 63-53 earlier in the season. These two teams have sort of gone different directions, in my opinion. Not that Newcath has necessarily fallen off, but I think Covcath's improved. They're playing their best ball right now at the right time of the year. I like Covcath in this matchup personally, but I think this is going to be a great first-round matchup, as a lot of these games are. I think this one is definitely a close game. And for Newcath, I think it's going to come down to what do they get out of their guards. And Brady Hydechu, we are expecting him to be one of the top players coming back in the 9th region this year. He's been up and down. He's been a little inconsistent. It was just been kind of a streaky year for him. You come back after the football. He had a bad ankle injury that he was kind of slow to start. There's a new chemistry to the team. He was trying to sort of find his role, maybe force some things early. He seemed to play better as of late, but I think he's the key. He's the one that's sort of take them to the next level and give them that guy that's tough to guard, that you just can't match up with. He can be that type of scorer for them, and I think Covcath will probably put a guy like Clint Massey on him, who is a pretty good defender. So that'll be a key matchup to watch. And then, of course, inside, Zach Tobler versus Drew McDonald, the freshman for Newcath, is going to be a very important matchup. Those two guys, whoever wins that from a productivity standpoint, both points and rebounds, will obviously be key in this game as well.
Yeah, to your point about Haichu, I think he was a guy that came in with the loss of Jake Geisler. He kind of felt like he had to take over the role of scorer and be that offense that they needed to fill that void. And I think he forced the issue. And I understand why. I see his reasoning behind that. But he was, like you said, fresh off of football. He hadn't had a lot of practice with his team. So I think he tried to do too much coming into that situation. But as you said, I think he's kind of taken a step back, and they've grown together as a team. They're a team that I think is dangerous in this tournament because they have the experience of getting, to the championship last year, but at the same time they're not as strong as they were. So Newcath and Covcath, I think, is a great matchup. As you said, I really like that Tobler and McDonald matchup down there. We saw McDonald have just a whale of a game in his first varsity game earlier this year
against Dixie,
and that was against Dixie. That was against a big time opponent. So we know he's capable, and Tobler, that's kind of his specialty is shutting down the big man on defense. So expect a lot of physicality going down in the post.
Yeah, and I think that the problem for Newcath is just going to be Nick Ruthsatz. And they did a good job against him earlier this year. And Grant Brannon, this is the other thing I'm really excited about this matchup is the coaching matchup. Grant Brannon, Scott Ruthsatz, two of the youngest coaches, but also the best X and O guys, in my opinion. They run lots of great sets. They do a good job of game planning for other teams. And it's going to be interesting to see what each of them come up with because I think Newcath did a really good job of containing Ruthsatz the first time around. It'll be interesting to see if they can do that a second time. I mean, again, he's a small guard, so there are certain things you can do, trying to put bigger guys, some more length on him, trying to keep him out of the lane. I think you have to turn him into a jump shooter and hope he beats you from the outside as opposed to making everybody else better by getting into the lane. If Newcath's able to do that, I think they've got a chance. If they let Ruthsatz make plays, get 25 points or so, it's going to be really tough to stop this Covcath team because I think they're starting to get enough contributions and feel comfortable and confident enough as a group to sort of beat you together. And when he gets off too, it really makes it tough to beat them.
Oh, you're without question. If you're Covcath, you don't want him scoring a lot of points. You want your other guys getting open and letting Ruthsatz get inside, kick out to the open threes because they're such a good shooting team. And we saw that against Holy Cross in their first-round district matchup.
They can be. They struggled so poorly against Holmes they couldn't make anything. And I think that's what you're saying is that's the key is when he makes shots for everyone else to where they can knock down all these open looks, they're really tough to beat. On the flip side, when you see what happened against Holmes, they struggled to make anything.
Well, what Newcath has to do is they can't let those shots be open shots. They have to be contested shots.
Right.
If you put some pressure in their face, they're going to struggle a little bit.
Yep.
And that goes for anyone. You can't leave guys wide open. And Covcath, they had so many wide open shots against Holy Cross. That's why they were successful. So Newcath's going to have to learn from that. I think they were there. I think they saw that. So that's got to be their game plan. They got to sit back, make them beat them with their offense and not get in too much trouble.
Well, you just brought up a very good point, too. Newcath and, of course, the 36th District played on different nights from the 35th. So both of these teams should have had chances to scout each other if they wanted to. I'm pretty sure I saw Newcath in the house Friday night as well for the finals of the 35th. So if you saw them there, they probably got two chances. I'm not sure if Covcath watched them, but the other thing you got to remember, Mike Listerman being on the bench of Holmes. Of course, this next matchup we're about to talk about, no longer at Covcath. So you've got Scott Roots that's not as familiar with all these other teams and what they've done in the past, type of things they've ran, whereas now we're flipping the page, moving on to that Holmes-Boone matchup on Thursday night. I think this helps Jason Boer so much to have Mike Listerman on his bench facing Boone in that first-round matchup. 6 p.m. is the tip-off there. I think this is the matchup that a lot of people are going to be excited to see. You've got two teams that, in my opinion, could have probably equal chances to win this whole thing and represent the 9th region downstate, and that's Holmes and Boone County. It's invaluable to have the experience of a guy like Mike Listerman as just an assistant coach because he's been through there. He's seen Boone play in the region year after year. He knows what type of things Coach Greg McQuarrie likes to do at Boone. That's obviously helped. Covcath's going to be in a different situation playing against Newcath. They don't have that experience. They haven't seen what Newcath's done, whereas Holmes will now have that with Listerman on their bench. I think that's a big advantage in this matchup. What do you look at when you see Holmes and Boone? Of course, you got a chance to just see Boone in the 33rd. What does Boone need to do to get over that hump? They lost to Cooper. How do they bounce back and beat Holmes?
Boone has to slow Holmes down, and I think that's got to be the game plan, and that is their only chance of beating that team. They're not athletic enough to run with those guys, but they don't do a lot of that anyway. So I think they're going to be comfortable doing that. Boone's already got a win over Holmes, which is just huge for them. They have wins over Holmes, they have wins over Dixie, so they're giant beaters at this point, and they're really huge in big game situations. So you got to like Boone's chances at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if this comes from Coach McQuarrie or if this is just something about Boone's players, but to me, this group relishes being the underdog and playing the top opponents or the teams that are viewed as better than them more so than when they're the hunted. Or as we saw in the Cooper final, Cooper has that whole why not us? Why can't we win a 33rd district title? They go out and they do it. Boone sort of struggles in that role, and they even struggled with Ryle the night before. But like you said, we've seen them beat Holmes and Dixie. They beat Holmes 61-51 just a couple weeks ago. This is going to be a fun matchup to watch, and I could easily see this one going either way. I think Holmes, I'd be surprised if Holmes does anything differently on the defensive end from what they did in the finals against Covcath, which was they extend that 2-3 zone, basically full court as like a 2-2-1 type of press that they just sort of fold back in their 2-3. They match up out of it a little bit. They really extend it and get out on jump shooters. The problem with that is you have to know where Zane McQuarrie is. You have to know where Chase Stanley is. Chase Stanley's shooting like 38% on the year, and he's knocked down at this point. If he's open, he's not missing. So you got to make those guys shoot off the dribble. That you got to be with them on the catch. Holmes did a great job of doing that against Covcath, but, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, what they do defensively. If they stay in that zone, you got to make sure you know where the shooters are, because we've seen Zane McQuarrie beat people single-handedly because he gets in the zone, he won't miss.
Well, that could really play into Boone's hands a little bit because they have a lot of ball handlers. They're very guard-heavy, so they can handle and withstand the pressure that Holmes is going to bring. And as you said, they're once they break that press, they're going to have some open shots down at their side of the court. So again, if McQuarrie's open, he's going to fire, and there's a good chance he's going to make it. So it will be honestly very surprising if Holmes changes anything. But I think if they want to slow things down for Boone, I think that might be one of their better opportunities.
Well, and I think the thing is, they'll slow it down with their defense. They'll extend their 2-3 all the way up the court, but they're not doing it to speed the game up and force turnovers. They're just doing it as token pressure. They fall back, and they really crowd the court on defense and make you work for an open shot. And that's what Covcath did. Covcath would pass it. They didn't turn the ball over. They only had 10 turnovers the entire game, but they pass it around looking for a shot, and nothing ever opened up as far as driving lanes go or really great open looks. And they took a lot of threes. They couldn't make them, and a lot of that, I think, was due. Covcath fans were saying, we had a really off shooting night. I think a lot more of it had to do with Holmes being very long and very quick to recover on their defensive rotations, getting out and challenging the shots. I think they can do it, but again, if you don't find McQuarrie, as you mentioned, he's going to knock them down. That's going to be a big problem. Who do you like in this matchup?
I think I like Boone to pull off the upset. Even though they lost in the finals, but I think they're going to make enough shots. They're going to come up big. Last year in the 9th region tournament, we saw kind of the emergence of Chase Stanley and Cooper Downs, and they just play so big in big situations. So I think they're going to get it done.
I'm on the other side of the fence here. I could see this game going either way easily. I'm going to go with Holmes, and the reason being is that the performance I saw against Covcath, this Holmes group seems locked in. They seem like they love playing together. They seem tight-knit. They seem like they've really bought into Coach Boer's system and what he wants to do. And I think that staff has done a great job of sort of formulating this, using this entire season and seeing the big picture. Not trying to get better by Christmas time or, the 1st of January, but trying to be better for this exact moment. I think we saw that against Covington Catholic, the best performance I've seen from Holmes this year. I was really, really impressed. I think they keep that rolling against Boone and into the 9th region tournament. If they win that one, of course, they have a good chance to make a run here. And that brings us to the final matchup in the first round, that Thursday night game between Lloyd and Highlands. And it's almost amazing we end up with this matchup. Props to Lloyd. They deserve to be here. They beat a very good Dixie team. I just watched that game today on video. They won that game. Dixie did not lose that game, Dixie didn't fail to show up and give it to Lloyd. Lloyd won that game. They made the plays necessary to win. Highlands, of course, playing in the 36th district, Highlands really, really struggled this year, had a rough year, find a way to sneak in by beating Dayton and Bellevue, and then they lose to Newcath by 5 in the finals, 49-44. I just don't think this Highlands team can score enough, and I think, honestly, the athleticism of Lloyd. Lloyd will run and jump you in the backcourt a little bit with their pressure. They don't have to play fast. They played a little slower against Dixie, but they'll still run and jump you a little bit and force some turnovers. I think that's going to give Highlands trouble, and I really think inside, if Pat Tolles doesn't own the paint, it's going to be really difficult because Lloyd has a lot of athletes that can offensive rebound and finish at the rim.
And we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I think Tolles is obviously their best option as far as Highlands goes. And if they want a chance to advance, to play against Holmes or Boone and make some kind of Cinderella run, they got to go through Tolles because he's just a superior athlete, and he's one of the few guys that can make a difference for them. If they go away from him, stay away from him, they don't have a lot of options outside of him. So it'll be interesting to see if they kind of change their ways or if they go with what they've been doing lately.
Yeah, Bailey Whitty has shot the ball well for them. I think he's a nice option on the perimeter. I think the Drew Heuliston can really score the ball for Highlands if he's high. I think they've got some guys who can make shots, but they need to run their offense through the post and through Tolles. But when you look at who's going to be guarding him, Tyler Bray, maybe only 6'4", 6'5", not an inch or two shorter than Tolles, but the premier athlete in the 9th region, protects the rim at a high level, and if he brings it like he brought it against Dixie, he finished with 25 points, he was going out knocking down threes. If he brings it that way against Highlands, I don't know how the Bluebirds match up with him at all. They just don't have a guy who can really stick with him athletically or speed-wise, and he does a great job of protecting the basket on the defensive end. So Lloyd, Highlands, I'm going Lloyd here. I really like the Juggernauts to make it to the second round, and they deserve it. It's been 13 years since they won a district. They finally do it again. I think they're going to advance past the first round.
Yeah, I like Lloyd. They're hot right now, so it's really hard to pick against them.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the best matchup in the first round here. What game do you look at and you say, yep, that's the one that I'm definitely waiting to see?
Well, I think there's two no-brainers, Newcath, Covcath, and then Holmes and Boone. But I think I'd have to say Holmes and Boone just because Holmes is perceived to be the better team, but Boone already has a victory over Holmes, rather. So I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. They're two very different teams, but it's kind of they kind of cancel each other out. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, Holmes and Boone is the no-brainer to me in this case. 61-51, the first meeting between these teams. Boone won that game. But I think we see a different game this time around. I think we see a little bit more defense in this one, actually. I know that was low scoring the first time. I think you see a game in the low 50s, possibly even the 40s between these two teams. I think they're really going to try to grind it out on the defensive side of the floor, and both teams will probably zone each other. I think they both do that pretty well. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I got to go with that as the premier matchup. I agree with you, though. Newcath and Covcath is interesting. I also think that Cooper-Dixie game is actually going to be pretty fun as well. But the top matchup, Holmes-Boone. Of course, we're not going to get the matchup that everyone wanted to see all year long, Holy Cross and Dixie. Right? I mean, that's the matchup everyone was waiting for. Holy Cross just couldn't get over the mental hump of beating Covcath. It seems to be that way every year in the 35th. Moving on. Who is your favorite looking at this bracket? And you can factor in the draw into this as well, because obviously in a year that's as wide open as this, the draw may have a lot to do with it. In my case, it doesn't, but I'll let you give your favorite first.
I think conventional wisdom says Dixie. They have the experience. They know how to win big games. They've been there, and they're going to be looking for blood, as I said earlier. That they're not happy with their performance against Lloyd, and I expect them to come out big and have a great showing in this tournament.
I'm going with Dixie as well. I think, I'm not sure that Cooper's a great first-round matchup for him, but really, when you look at it, who else did you really want to play? I mean, regardless, you're going to have to play somebody, right? And you take a look through all these names, and when I went through this earlier, I said, Dixie's the one team where no matter what spot I put them in, I still think it's the best spot. You know what I mean? Like, I still think they're the best option to win it all. Other teams, I could change around their matchups, and I thought, oh, that might give them trouble, or this might have given them trouble if they would have been placed here. I think Dixie is the best overall team. I think they've been that way since the beginning of the year. They were my number one pick. They've gone wire to wire in the NKSB Top 10 as the number one team. I never moved them out of that spot. I'm sticking with them for the 9th Region Tournament. Dixie is my favorite as well. My sleeper, however, the team Dixie's playing? Cooper. And I know that's tough to say that, but if Cooper's able to win that first round game, I think Cooper has something that some of these other teams, maybe with the exception of Boone, doesn't have, and that's the fact that they've got strong leadership and they play together as a team. This Cooper team does not have the best talent, but all year long they've been a group that's sort of tightly knit. They've sort of tried to play it against the odds type mentality for them, and it's worked, and it's really worked here down the stretch. They sort of, Alex Webster, you just talked to Coach Sullivan, and you sort of get a sense for what type of leader Alex Webster has been, the way he's taken this team to another level in the postseason. And I just think this Cooper plays like they have no tomorrow. They've got nothing to lose, and this is their last hurrah. It's the group of seniors that kind of put this program on a map, took them from, again, he talked about it, losing by 50 or 60 points to respectability and ultimately winning a 33rd district championship. This Cooper team is the one that could definitely put a kink into Dixie's plans early on, send them home early, and also make a run and surprise everybody in the tournament.
Well, for me, I think if Holmes, I know I picked Boone. If Holmes gets past Boone, they have a clear path to the 9th region championship. So they're a team that I think they're the next team after Dixie. That's going to make a run. But as far as a surprise goes, I think Covcath. They're a team that's they can lose to anyone, but they're also a team that I wouldn't count them out ever. I never count Covcath out because they're a team they win. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. Now, they've taken a step back recently, but we've seen it all too many times how resilient they are. And Newcath, I think they get past Newcath, and then anything can happen from there.
I agree. All right, that does it for this edition of the Bracket Breakdown Podcast. All week long, we'll be having updates coming live at you from the Bank of Kentucky Center on the campus of Northern Kentucky University as we update you Wednesday night. Again, the games start at 6 o'clock, its second one at 7:30, and then on Thursday night, we'll have the second round of first-round matchups. Saturday, 1 o'clock and 2:30 are your semifinal times, and then Sunday at 1 o'clock the championship game. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter. Just search at NKY Sports Blog. Also, like us on Facebook. You can get our updates there as well. For Ryan Succo, I'm Rick Broering. We'll see you at the Bank of Kentucky Center.